Very much from Washington, D.C. Here now to hash through this whole deal. We have Keith Boykin, he's former Clinton White House aide. Tony Katz is a Tea Party supporter and radio talk show host. And Heather Higgins, Independent Women's Forum chairman. Heather Higgins, I just want to ask you what you think about Obama coming out in favor of same-sex marriage. Is this a distraction from the economic issues or what, Heather? What do you think?
Absolutely. Obama coming out of the closet is non-news. Everybody knew. There was always a wink and a nod that this was where he was, and he was only saying for political reasons that he was on the other side of the issue. He's very much hoping that Romney takes the bait. He's also hoping to make his deep-pocketed, extreme left wing of his base very, very happy with this issue. And so it's a political dodge. It's about avoiding economic issues, which is really what this is about.
You bet. By the way, Senator Jim DeMint, later in the show, when we talked, he says exactly what you said. It's very interesting. Keith Boykin, you know what? Mitt Romney's much smarter than your man on this, Keith, because Romney today just said it's a state issue. And that's what Dick Cheney said not so long ago. It's a state issue, Keith. Why didn't Obama just leave it there?
Obama said the same thing. It is a state issue. He's just expressing his personal opinion, and his personal opinion has evolved to the point where he now believes same-sex marriage is something that should be allowed. But look, you know, Larry, I don't think this is an issue that's going to hurt the president in the election. 57% of the independents who've been polled recently show that they support same-sex marriage. I don't think that that's going to affect him in the swing states. I think people are, as you said, focused on the economy for the election, and those are the issues that are going to actually help Barack Obama.
Now you're cooking, Keith Boykin. Now you're cooking. No, go ahead, Heather, real quick.
Can I just jump in on this? It's really interesting that he does this the day after North Carolina, where if you look at where that vote came from, it came from the black community. And it just is a real testament, because part of the report mentioned some of the communities that opposed gay marriage, but really a lot of it's the Hispanic and the black communities. And to so deliberately go in their face shows how much he takes them for granted.
I have to correct you on this, Heather. I've studied this issue for quite some time. I'll tell you, there's not a single vote, not a single time, any time in the past 20 years, where any black elected official has ever lost office for supporting same-sex marriage. You can go back any time. There's no example that it's not going to happen in this case.
That's probably because there are not very many of them who have done so. If you look at who turned out in California on Proposition 8, etc.
Deval Patrick in Massachusetts, David Patterson here in New York. Look at Cory Booker in New Jersey. There's tons of examples.
You know, if your examples are going to be from Northeast states, you're not exactly speaking to the rest of the country.
Can the voice of reason speak here?
Yeah, you got a lot of black ministers, by the way, who oppose gay marriage. I'm going to leave. Look, I'm a live and let live guy. It is a state issue. I want to get my friend Tony Katz in here. Tony, as a Tea Party guy, which is why we recruited you, and I thank you for coming on the show, give me a whack at the gay marriage issue before we go to the Tea Party.
It's not a Tea Party issue per se, but Keith is right in one respect. It doesn't do anything for the president. He still can't win re-election. And when you talk about the constituencies you're talking about, which is Hispanic and black constituencies, we're not talking about people running for office. We're talking about people who have a cultural belief and a religious belief to which this goes against. But the real issues are the economy. The real issue is the $535 million to Solyndra and the death of Brian Terry.
Hold those thoughts. Hold those thoughts. Stay with us. The other big story tonight, angry voters took out their fury over the president and the economy at the polls. You had three big winners, as far as I can tell. Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker, a resurgent Tea Party itself, and a federal inmate who beat President Obama in several West Virginia counties. You can't make that up. Now, CNBC contributor and National Review political reporter Bob Costa. He joins us now with all last night's highlights. Good evening, Robert. We're moving on from gay marriage. What can you tell us about yesterday's elections?
Well, first of all, in West Virginia, you had a federal inmate who's living in Texarkana get 40% against President Obama. Why did he do this? It was a coal miner crusade. The people in West Virginia have soured on the president. They don't like how the EPA is holding up those mining permits, and they revolted last night.
All right, so give me some other. Was Scott Walker a big winner? He polled more than his two leading Democratic opponents polled. That, to me, is sheer raw political power. Does that make Scott Walker the prohibitive favorite in Wisconsin?
I don't want to say he's the prohibitive favorite, Larry. It's going to be a very much of an uphill challenge for Scott Walker. We did see a contentious Democratic primary in Wisconsin's recall election, and that shows that the big labor forces are a bit divided, whether they're going to coalesce around the nominee Romney remains to be seen, but Walker still has a struggle ahead. Wisconsin is a battle zone, and he has to have a lot of troops on the ground to go up against the union workers.
And last one, quickly. Mitt Romney's relationship to the Tea Party. If the Tea Party is resurgent, and there are a lot of tough Senate primaries coming that are going to involve Tea Party versus status quo Republicans, what is Mitt Romney's relationship to the Tea Party as you see it right now, Robert Costa?
Real quick, Larry, in politics, watch actions, not just words. And since he has become the presumptive nominee, Romney has spent a lot of time courting the Tea Party, courting conservatives. He's reaching out to them. He wants to build his base before he really starts his general election campaign.
All right. Thank you, Bob Costa. We're going to go back to the panel. We got Keith Murdoch. We have Keith Boykin, Tony Katz, and Heather Higgins. Thank you very much. Heather, let me go to you. I want to ask you if the Tea Party is really resurgent, because I don't see it around the country. All right, I saw it with Richard Murdoch's election. I get your issue on Obamacare. That's a key issue. He's coming on the program later on. We already talked to him. But this isn't 2010. You don't have the town meetings and the town halls and all that stuff. And most of the big money came from Washington organizations, Heather. Color me just a little bit skeptical.
I think that if you look, a lot of the money did come from Washington organizations. Club for Growth was a huge player. FreedomWorks was too, but FreedomWorks also has an awful lot of boots on the ground. If you understand Indiana law, one of the challenges we had with the Obamacare repeal pledge and letting people know it is Indiana has a rule that you cannot do a robocall there. It has to be a live caller. So if you are a genuine Tea Party group with lots of volunteers, you can actually get your message out. So the Murdoch campaign, FreedomWorks, various other Tea Party groups that were really indigenous to Indiana worked their tails off on this one, and it really, really showed.
All right, Tony Katz, I just want to ask you, is in fact there going to be a throw the bums out mentality because the economy stinks, because the leadership in Washington stinks? From your perspective, is that going to happen? Throw them all out.
It's not even a question of is it going to happen. Nothing has changed between 2010 and now. You don't see them on the street corner, but you see the effect of what they do. They're poll watching, they're precinct walking, they're phone banking, they're working for Ted Cruz down in Texas, they're working for Dan Lillenquist in Utah, they're working for Karen Harrington in Florida to take out Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Go back to what Bob Costa was saying about what happened in Wisconsin. Kathleen Falk, who many thought the unions wanted her to be the nominee against Scott Walker, she lost Dane County by 30 points. Dane County, as Mike Flynn of Big Government called it, he called it the San Francisco of the Heartland. 30 points. No one's buying what the big left is trying to push, and the Tea Party never went anywhere. They just got smarter, better, more adept, and once again, the progressives and the MSM are wrong.
Well,
All right,
I think
Keith Boykin, you are leading progressive on this panel. Would you respond to Tony Katz, please?
I think the Tea Party is sending mixed signals. On the one hand, you've elected or nominated basically Mitt Romney to be the Republican Party standard bearer. Well, the Republicans have nominated Mitt Romney, regardless of who did it, and he's not a Tea Party candidate. On the other hand, you have this election yesterday with Murdoch, but Murdoch is going to have the same fate essentially that Sharon Angle had, that Christine O'Donnell had, that Jim Miller had. They all won the primaries, but they ended up losing the elections, and this could actually drag the entire Republican Party off the cliff, further to the right, and cause them to lose the election. They might even lose.
You're completely wrong.
They might even lose Indiana.
First of all, that's complete mythology. You're making it up as you go along.
It happened in 2010. We saw it in 2010.
You can't say that the Tea Party elected Mitt Romney and then say, oh, it doesn't matter when you're trying to make your point. That's not acceptable.
I didn't say they elected Mitt Romney.
Hold on a second. Let me just get. I need another opinion on this. Heather Higgins, how do you see the relationship between the Tea Party and Mitt Romney? Let's assume for the moment that the Tea Party is resurging. I think I just invented that, but you know what I mean. How does Mitt Romney relate to a resurging Tea Party?
When there were primaries, the bar was incredibly high. The standard was Ronald Reagan, and essentially everybody falls short of that standard. Once you have a nominee, the bar becomes incredibly low. The bar becomes, is he not Barack Obama, and is he breathing? Romney's breathing, and he's not Barack Obama, plus he's really changed. If you look at how he's evolving as a candidate with his experience, and I'm one of those who thinks that it was actually very good for him that it wasn't easy, that it wasn't a coronation, because he has now moved from being just a resume candidate to one who's increasingly talking about the larger vision of the country. And I think what the Tea Party is looking for is a contrast election. They are people who really understand that this is about the future of the country.
Free market capitalism. That's what I want to hear.
It's about
free market capitalism.
It's about the Constitution, and does it actually mean something if you make it up as you go?
There won't be much
Producers
of
are
a
screaming at
contrast
me.
when
You're
these-
all great. You're all great. I just want to say, Heather Richardson-Higgins, it's a pleasure to have you back on this show, and I hope you come back some more. Tony
Absolutely.
Katz, my man, thank you very much. And Keith Boykin, you are such a professional.